Hello, everyone. This is episode 111 of Art Cafe. I'm continuing more frequent releases with this coronavirus madness going on, and I'm really hoping those episodes are bringing some positive vibes to everyone listening. In this episode, I spoke to Emmanuel Shiu. Emmanuel is a concept art veteran in film industry with career ranging from VFX to art department for some major films we all seen and loved. We spoke about state of the industry, how it's going to change with the new normal, and a few other things. Hope you're gonna enjoy this one. Let's go.
I went to the convention, the IAMAG thing, and I was going to speak at it, and it was like, the funny thing is, you get there, everybody's still excited. I'm the first one there. No, Dylan was the first one there. Then it was me, and then so we go out that night with Patrice, who's putting on the event, and he's like, everything's good, everybody's overreacting, and then that night, like as we were eating, I think he got an email from one of the presenters, and they're like, Microsoft is saying, don't leave. and we're like, oh man, Microsoft, overreacting and all that stuff. And then literally the next day, Patrice is like, I think we're gonna have to cancel the event.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because the Paris, at that time there wasn't really much in France.
Right.
But they were saying, the next day was the shutdown of the Louvre, and then Patrice is like, oh, that's not good. And then the city found out he was doing this thing, and then
the city shut him down.
Yeah, pretty much. It was a city. And then a lot of the presenters didn't want to come anymore. So It was like, if you have no presenters, you can't put on the show. So, a lot of big places like Facebook, we're like, we can't risk, having our employees come, and that was a big one. And so, the event got canceled, and I was like, oh man. So, we're actually trying to help him do an online thing, because, it's really hard hit on a lot of people who are doing these events, and
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of money that goes into it, it's just like even from the onset, it's almost like a loss, right? It's very difficult to make money doing events.
I mean, I didn't realize, but basically they, with the money, advanced sales of the next event, they use that as cash flow, and now there's no next event because you didn't even go into this event.
Right.
So there, and he had paid for all the rooms, he had paid for the space, everything was paid for already, and so we're like, oh man. But at that time, I was like, I went there with my wife, and we're like, okay, let's get the hell out of here, like ASAP, right? So we changed our plane tickets. I mean, we were there basically 6 days. Like we just said, okay, whatever day we could find. So instead of leaving on a Sunday or Monday, we left on like the Friday. We just, let's go. And of course, you wouldn't know it. Like I got on the flight, everything's good. And then you're in the middle of the night, you're in the plane, and you hear this guy coughing up a storm, hacking up like crazy.
Oh man.
and he was like right in the air. And at that time, like people were starting to go, what the heck is wrong with that guy?
It wasn't the World War Z plane event just yet.
I was starting to go, oh man, this is gonna be bad. This is gonna be bad. Like, and he was just 2 rows back. So
that's not good.
He was, it was scary, and I was like, oh man, don't do that. But he kept doing it through the flight, and I think at the end, when they when we're almost getting ready to descend and land, and he was still doing it. People just started to say, "Hey, look, man, like you can cough, but just don't cough into the air. It's not cool what you're doing." And he was an older guy. I don't know that I think he was really sick and he just wasn't sure what's going on. And I was like, oh, I guess we're getting what he's got. And so, we get back and, still, it's still like okay times, like nobody's freaking out yet. And then, we're going out and then I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not feeling so good. Oh, man. I was really freaked out because I was like, okay, I got what he got. And he's got it, and then we're a cluster, and then we're gonna mess everybody up, no good. And I was just freaking out because I was really getting sick, and I was
Corona time.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, and I really thought I had it because I had a fever, sore throat, cough. I had everything except for the for the shortness of breath, which I didn't have. And then I said, okay. It was a Tuesday, and then I said, by Friday, I was like, okay, I need to get tested because I need to know. And the air, if I have it, then the people who are on that plane need to know because it's, that literally could be 30, 40 people easily. So I went to get tested, and that was awful. That test, man, they shoved it basically, feel like they shoved it into my brain.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it was horrible, and I was like, I mean, I've never felt that sensation before.
So it's not good. Yeah, it feels very weird.
It was really horrible, and I was like, okay, but okay, at least they did it twice because they wanted to test me for the flu as well. So the flu test came back negative, and I was like, well, when am I going to get this test back? And they go, you'll get it back in like 3 days. So in the end, it took 7 days. And so every day, you're completely isolating. So I don't even see my wife, basically. I mean, I'm just, because you don't know, right? And it's of course brutal. It's brutal. But in the end, it came back negative. And, I'm still dealing with a little bit of the cough now, but, I'm pretty much back to normal. And then, all this stuff happened, right? Shelter in place, all this stuff. But I was already shelter in place as soon as I got back.
Right. Yeah.
So it was pretty much, it's the same for me. But, being sick, man, and then wondering if you have it was tough, especially when you start seeing people like really dying from it,
Yeah. Let me throw you a wrench here. I've been following sort of the outbreak and how it's going, listening to doctors. And there was one statistic that I've heard that the early tests, which is what you had, like the test that they were doing with the swab and sending it to CDC and the ones that took forever, because now they are having those tests that take 15 minutes.
Well, supposedly they're rolling it out, but
yeah, they're rolling it out. But the amount of testing they do now is so much bigger, and there's more labs involved, and it's more accurate than it used to be. But I've heard like the early tests were only like 50% accurate.
Yeah, so there was like a lot of false positives and false negatives.
Yeah, so you never know. Like you might have had it. Who knows?
I might, and thank goodness this is kind of over. I mean, for me, but I mean, I look at people who, it's like, man, New York's getting overrun, it's really rough. And I was thinking to myself, oh man, like, all right, I'm staying home. I can put all my energy into making good art, fuck that. I was just like, I couldn't get motivated. I was like, why am I feeling this way? And it's because of all those people dying. It's very depressing, man,
Yeah.
So I kind of had to give myself permission just to, not do anything for a while. And then now I'm sort of feeling better,
I think people are, I understand. This might be, I don't think it's a controversial way of thinking, because the sort of like the lockdown thing that we have and the measures that CDC is recommending, all of that is totally makes sense. I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to even argue with this. I know some people are, and it's like, why? I mean, that's why we have scientists and doctors.
Yeah,
for that reason.
Science, yeah.
But I'll tell you, I maybe spent first week when I was getting serious. I spent first week like paying attention to news instead of the reliable sources, and that was depressing. I was just like, and just like reading statistics and all that stuff is like, you know what? I cannot deal with that because it's just A, it's too depressing, and B, it's very misleading, and there was just so much misinformation. And every now and then I see a headline like that, and it's like, oh, you assholes, you know?
Yeah.
I see that, and it's like, fuck, dude. This is why like no one trusts media, because they just blow up numbers for clickbait.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't know what you're clicking on. Like it sounds like the right headline, and then later on you find out it's not real, or you find out it's from a real opinionated source. So now I just have a source.
Remember that story that came out? Like it was very early on when they were trying to, and I get what they are doing, you know, because everyone's was like, oh, it's old people disease, you know. It's like, no, it's not. And so like to prove their point, they released the story about the guy who went to Disney World. He was from California. He went to Disney World in Florida, got sick and died, and he was 34. But they completely...
I didn't hear that one actually.
Oh, dude, that was like a very, very loud story out there for a while. Like, you know, LA Times and New York Times, everyone was reporting on it. Not all of this news sources, but most and really reliable news sources completely omitted the fact that the guy just recovered from cancer, or was just recovering from cancer.
Oh, okay, well there you go. I mean,
and also had like some serious underlying conditions, and like I feel very sad and very, very sorry for the family and for the whole situation. But just how media use that as it's almost like a token for them. It's like just disgusting, right? So I stopped paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I found out, you know, and I didn't dig that deep, but I found out a lot of these news affiliates are all, you know, they have certain interests of reporting certain things. And in the end, that's why I don't like news. Yeah, I'm just like, news sucks. And then I try to just listen to like some of the, like I listen to Cuomo, you know, like what he says, you know, in terms of his briefings. Because I want to hear what he has to say. Because I like actually hearing him update, because I feel like at least it's genuine. What he feels.
He seems to be very level in terms of how he talks about the situation.
Yeah,
he doesn't like.
He's a human being.
Sugarcoat. You know? Yeah.
And I like listening to Newsom talk about what's the state of affairs for us in California.
Yeah.
And that's about all I listen to nowadays. Looking at the numbers, it's just like, oh my God. I mean, it's hard not to get depressed when you see people die, you know?
Right.
I try to just...
Someone pulled a statistic. I saw like a statistic of causes of death. Alcohol is way up there. It's like, I think like some huge numbers. There's some stuff that you would say, that you would think that we could do everything about to prevent, and it's causing millions of people dying every year.
And like alcohol, heart attacks.
Exactly.
I think that's a big one.
And even looking at H1N1, I again, it was completely different disease. The virality of it was different. It wasn't so violent against like people who have underlying condition, and it wasn't as rapidly progressing as this one is. So obviously the measures were different, but it gives you perspective when you hear, okay, H1N1 swine flu had 1.5 billion people sick within first 12 months, and 500,000 died during that period.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of this stuff is it's amazing how
it gives you perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's horrible, but then makes you realize, okay, all the news media is doing, they're trying to make the numbers almost like a game for them to basically fearmonger people into like reading more of the news. And then they do like this thing like, oh, read first article for free, and then, you know, the next one is $5.
Like yeah, because as soon as that happens, I just like X, you know, and now I just don't even click into it. But I think, you know, it is an unprecedented time, you know, like this has never happened like this,
right?
It's affecting it's affecting the economy. So I'm trying to, you know,
that's
I don't
the
go
part
out,
that worries me the most. I think the economy.
Yeah, and I don't go out except like I'll go to do you see me still?
Yeah, I can still. Yeah, don't worry about the. That's
Okay.
probably overrated.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll still go out to like restaurants, to get takeout because if I don't go, they're gonna go out of business,
Yeah, yeah.
So you just kind of like, okay, put it in my trunk. But I know them well because these are the places I've been to many times,
Yeah.
So you kind of go, they know the drill and stuff like that. But it's like you kind of have to help who you can,
Yeah.
How's it
I
been
agree.
for you? I mean, like just being at home and you have kids.
Yeah, it's been difficult. I just want to finish this thought, and I've said this many times, and I think it's a very important thing to say. It's okay to pay attention to what's going on. I think everyone should, but just read sources that are trusted. CDC, if you're in America, or whatever health department you have in your country, and then local health departments, they give you all the information you need to know in order to how to be prepared and how to properly behave in a situation like that. And then like your local government briefings that explain the situation that rely directly to you. And then if you want to know what's happening in the country on the political level, you have the presidential briefing every day. The part that just drives me up the wall is people going ballistic on this. It's like, whether you like the president or not, just this applies to you. He's the information you're getting is the information that applies to a country. So if you live in a country, whether you agree with it or not, it's applying to you anyways, right?
Yeah.
So if you're interested to know, just you can use that source. If not, then just look at your local government, just to get an information from the law perspective or the recommendations for businesses and that stuff. It's really important, especially if you run business, right? That's so important to know.
Yeah, and my wife says, "Hey, why do you want to listen to Trump?" Because she heard me listen. I listen to him, as much as I can stand, but it's information, because coming straight from him, you can see where this is kind of going, It's just information.
I hate the partisanship. I hate the divide that even in the times like that where people should stick together and try to rally together towards like just having this situation dealt with as soon as possible, so everyone can get back to work and get back to their own business.
Yeah.
Like everyone should be cheering and happy if we're progressing towards that direction. But then that's what I stopped paying attention to politics. This is the first time I'm paying attention to politics, quote unquote, but it's only in relation to knowing what am I supposed to do as a citizen of this country, and only in that fashion. And it also gives me an information who should I unfollow completely. I don't want to listen to like.
So what are, aside from Trump and the CDC and local governments, what do you have any sources like sites you go to?
I don't pay attention to any of it. Even when I listen to briefings, like, okay, Trump has like this very weird way of talking. Okay, it's just the way he talks. He's always been talking that way. So I don't pay attention much to that. For me, the information about in which direction the country is heading, that's what I want to know. Then listening to Dr. Fauci, who is basically on the front lines, and he's the head of CDC. Is he head of CDC? Right, he's one of the
allergy, whatever infectious disease thing. He's head of that. Yeah.
But he gives the most important updates about what they're gonna do from like medical perspective and whatnot, and what developments are there. I just listen to that because it's so important. I want to know when this ends, and what should I do? That's what I want to know.
That's the funny thing, though. Unfortunately, you won't ever know, but it's their best guess, I guess. It
gives you an idea, and here's the most important part. It gives you a goal to prepare for. Like, okay, like there's an idea that they want to do social distancing, let's say till April 30th, right? So it gives you two informations. If I play by the rules, right, and really try to be a good, like, quote unquote good citizen, the likelihood of this being shorter, the situation like that being shorter, is just better, right?
Which everybody felt that way. Because not the guys on Florida dancing on the beach.
I feel like there's two camps. There's like a camp of those who are really paying attention, and they're like going in almost like, okay, like that's a little bit too much, you know, like you don't have to wear gloves and all that stuff. Like you're kind of going crazy there, and full hazmat suits, you know.
I see those, but I mean, you know, there's a balance. I mean,
yeah, but there are the guys who's like, oh, it's just the flu. It's like, okay, I mean, might not affect you, but you know, once you're granny, you're gonna get it, then you're gonna be, you know, talking different tunes. But
yeah, and yeah, if you don't care about that, I mean, at the very end, I mean, if you think about your own convenience, then at least think about the fact that you want to shorten this time, then stay at home and make the numbers go down so that it can be shorter. You know?
Exactly. That's the inconvenient part to making things more convenient in the future. That you have to be a little inconvenient in those times to make this convenient.
Yeah, because if this keeps going, it's just going to go longer. If you keep going out and getting sick and getting other people sick, then it's just going to keep going and going and going until it stops.
Yeah. At least no one's complaining about lattes not having enough foam in their Starbucks cup.
Well, you know, and that's the kind of thing that drives me up the wall, because I'm like, people are dying and you're complaining about your first world problems, you know. It's like, get some perspective, man, you know. And, I mean, in our industry, you know, like shows are stopping left, right, and center, and a lot of people out of work.
Yeah.
You know, and not just concept artists, but just, you know, like a lot of people who actually work on the set and all that kind of stuff, they don't have work anymore.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I feel the economy part is the one that's gonna hit the hardest later on. It's like a delayed impact that's related to it. That's the part that I fear the most, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't think about it. I've been saying this many times. I try to not only try to remain positive, but I've said this as well. Like, this is the best time to learn. Like, you start to realize how many people are unprepared when a situation like that hits. Meaning, like, all of a sudden, the thing you were taking for granted now becomes completely obsolete because of that situation, and you might be out of work for months.
Yeah.
And this notion of, like, you know, the ability to learn quick and acquire new skills now becomes one of the most important skills to have, you know, with disruption like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think it's a really good time to learn new things and new software and finish those paintings that you had in the back burner, you know. Yeah. But I mean, you know, like I said, you know, I always was like, I was going to do this, you know, I was going to do a whole bunch of stuff, and you know, you realize sometimes that it's okay to give yourself a little space to feel, you know, it's draining, you know, to feeling depressed and all that. And I think what you were saying, some of the ways that, like, just, you know, tone down on the exposure to all the noise, you know, be informed of what you need to be, and then maybe, you know, once you get adjusted, really, you know, put yourself to task and do some good work or learn some new software. You know, there's a ton of stuff out there, and a lot of people are making it for a lot cheaper now.
Yeah.
More accessible. I mean, even like, I think Learn Squared is, you can, like, the first lesson or something.
All the classes for first lesson.
Yeah.
All free. Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? I mean,
55 hours of materials.
Yeah, it's just literally, like, you have no excuses to not do it. You know, like, now's the time. I mean, and unfortunately, some people will be out of work. Well, then maybe that's the time to level up. Then, you know, what else can you do? You know.
Exactly. You know, this is one of those things where I think realization that, you know, nothing is set in stone. Everything can change, almost like a switch, right? Because this is literally, in the matter of days, it went from, like, my life has a perfect balance. I do, you know, I work with the studio, I go to my work, to my office or whatever. All of a sudden, it's all upside down. I have no work, and what the hell am I supposed to do? And it doesn't look like it's coming back soon, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the interesting part, that I thought, you know, what is going to happen to the movie industry? I don't know. if this keeps going. Theaters.
What's your feels? What do you feel is going to happen? Like if you put your Nostradamus, I am now a fortune teller.
Yeah, I've been trying to like consult the crystal ball for the last couple of weeks, and the crystal ball is pretty much blank for me because it's saying check back later. Because I'm just sitting there going, because I've read like the theaters are really getting hit. No one's going. So so of course, you're moving to a streaming sort of online model is going to make a lot of sense,
Right.
And honestly, this thing they're talking about reoccurrences, even if it goes away in the summer, it'll come back.
It will until we get the vaccine.
Until we get the vaccine, and then who knows? But I mean, by then the damage will be done.
Yeah.
Because I don't see the theaters being, well, if you have no theaters, then you have no movies. So if those theaters in months' time say, "Wow, we're done," then that's going to be a hit. And then a lot of the films that are being they'll have to be released online, I guess, at some point, and lose a lot of money. Productions will scale back. And now I see that a lot of times they may sort of start really, because a lot of artists will be out of work. The pay scale might change. A lot of those things, it's like, because there'll be a lot of competition for that one job now,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the one thing that no one's thinking about. No, I agree with you. Like that I wasn't even thinking about that too. I mean, I had a glimpse of that thought back in my head when I was looking at the prices of like the market of real estate, what the home prices are and the rent prices are. Like they're dropping, dropping heavily.
Yes.
Like even in the area that I live, the prices dropped within last 2 weeks, like $300 for like the rental units. That's a lot of money. That's more than like I mean, it dropped more than it raised in a year, right? So when you see that happening and you think about the amount of unemployment that's going to be there, like the competition means that it's probably easier to hire someone who is lower.
Yes, who's cheaper, basically.
Cheaper, a cheaper, like lower bar of the the amount of money they ask for.
Yeah, they'll cut their budgets, their pre-pro budgets. They'll cut all parts of it. They'll cut. So the small VFX shops gone. It's going to be a big hit on the industry, and it's going to take a while before it comes back. But this is where I think games is probably a better transition.
100%.
Yeah, because they will slow down because it's still hard to make a game all from home, but it will be easier than you can't make a movie from home. Unless it's an animated movie, then maybe, but.
I think animation and games. I have a lot of friends in games industry. I mean, Naughty Dog just released the press information that they're postponing the release, but it's not because they cannot finish the game. It's because they cannot distribute the game. Like if you read the release notes, it's like, I mean, if you think about it, the way the games have been set up for forever, and even though it's all transitioning towards online, and it's been transitioning for years now, the reality is a lot of people still don't buy games online or download games online. They still don't do that.
Really?
There's just a giant market apparently that just doesn't do that just yet. People prefer buying games in the box and have a physical copy. So
The Last of Us is being postponed?
Oh yeah, I think Last of Us, and there was another game.
Like till when?
Oh, they didn't say till when, until they figure it out. That's what they said.
Okay. Because I think now is the perfect time to have a game come out, because it's like, man, everybody's aching for content,
Yeah, but I feel the reality of the situation is that, again, like there's a giant market of people that just don't buy games online. They like buying physical copies, and I mean, if it wasn't a financial hit, I'm pretty sure everyone would be releasing games now. But all of the companies that were supposed to release their games now, they're postponing the release. So that tells you something, right? You can kind of like deduct, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think some of those companies can do that. And obviously they have reserves and all that, but I think
Right.
when everything bounces back, the game company will still be sort of moving forward, but the film places are really going to be like, okay, we'll start the show back up now. And for a lot of
Right.
people who don't realize, they just say, okay, we're just going to cut we're going to postpone or put it on hiatus, and that happens a lot, regardless of this virus. And now it's just like
Right.
everything doesn't make sense. They can't shoot. They can't go to Atlanta to shoot or go to
Yeah.
Australia to shoot.
Yeah.
It's a big hit for the industry, for a lot of industries.
Yeah, live action is definitely going to hurt. I feel to me, obviously streaming is an option. To me, it feels like a lot of things will have to change in terms of how the films are made. One of those things, and I think it was, who I was talking with? Oh, John Park. John Park was mentioning this. Just giving credits where it's due. That those digital sets, right? The Unreal Engine
Yeah.
digital sets. I think that's gonna become way more spread out or way more used in the industry. I mean, we all know the shows that are kind of like building upon that. I mean, you've already seen one released, which was the Mandalorian that used that technology, which
Well,
looks
everybody's
great.
starting to do that now. Like,
Yeah, and I feel that's one of the solutions, because this is the kind of work where you have a set on which you don't have to have hundreds of people. Like you might only need a couple of people at a time in order to make the shoot. Like, okay, we're making a shot like that. We need someone who's gonna work with the set and prep the set. We need actors, and we need the director or camera operators. We don't need like all of the rigging and green screen. The amount of people that are required on a set like that is much smaller than on the regular set. I feel that could be a solution that's gonna maybe slow the like take the blunt of the impact away and make it not as horrible where it's like everything is shut down for a while. I feel it's
one.
Yeah, it's a tough. It is. I'm also taking into consideration the fact that when we work on movies, specifically movies, right? Because the video games and animation I think those are two markets that are going to be less impacted. They are and will be impacted. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be like grinded to the halt.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I think when you look at live action, usually the amount of work that goes beforehand and the amount of time it takes to prep the movie, like whenever if the movie is starting now, they are thinking about 2022, 2023, right? For the release. It's not 2021. So like even if it was 2021, it's still like a year ahead where, well, I mean, everything can happen. Like even if you shoot the movie in 2021, that's so far away that you can definitely prepare for that. So I feel like the shows that maybe were slated to, okay, we want to work on this project, maybe start prep for this one or pre-production for that one. I think those shows gonna still be there. I think the biggest impact is on the ones that are almost finished or were like in filming.
I mean,
those
like
are the ones that are shut down.
Pushing a year out, like Top Gun and all those movies are being pushed, and
then
they'll still see the revenue from it though. Then I think depending on how this thing goes. But I mean, wouldn't it be cool if I don't know if you heard, but I think it was either in Germany or in France. They're proposing testing and then having a band like like you got tested and you have a band, you're negative. Right. Like you come into any shoot, like and you just like by then the testing is so good, you just you're negative, fine, come in.
And then you get they're like, oh, let's the band is pretty cute, but you can fake it. What if we make a chip?
Then there's that. But I mean,
let's put a chip in your neck so we can have all the information. And by the way, we're not gonna tell you that, but there's a GPS hidden in it. But shh, don't tell anyone. So we're gonna track wherever you go.
Yeah, it's the future.
And it has a tiny microphone too, so whatever you say, it's gonna be recorded. indefinitely.
Oh man,
Brave New World,
it's all
man.
moving towards that, man. But I mean, this is real though. I mean, they're really proposing that, and I don't know how that would work, but because my sister, I
don't
have two
know.
sisters, and they just went back to Hong Kong, like almost 2 weeks ago, and they all have because coming in from some other place, you have to have a band, and you have to stay home quarantined. You can't go out of your house, and it tracks you. It's pretty insane.
It's pretty insane. And when you read news, like the president of the Philippines is like, I'm gonna shoot everyone in the head who's disobeying the rules of quarantine. It's like, what the fuck? So like you realize, okay, like we live in America, and even in Western Europe, the restrictions are much more severe. Here it's like you do have restrictions, but because of the Constitution, they can't just, unless there's like a specific situation where
unless it's wartime and it's martial law, I think they can. They can impose certain things.
I don't think it's countrywide. From what I remember seeing, like for instance, for California, the stay-at-home initiative, the stay-at-home order, is more of a suggestion rather than actual law. I don't think they give citations to people.
I think some people have gotten citations from being too close to somebody. I've heard, but I mean, this is I've heard. I mean, I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I've looked into the when they imposed, because I don't think they've changed it, but when they imposed it I think it's more strict for LA County. I don't know what it is for specific counties, but California wide, it's a recommendation, right? So it's not like a direct, you cannot leave home.
And the funny thing is, then a lot of people take it as, well, okay, I can go and do hiking and all this stuff.
Yeah. And parks are packed and people are stupid.
Yeah, so parks are closed now because that's crazy, because...
Yeah, they just had to.
It's like, come on, guys. You went from one place to, instead of restaurants, you went to parks.
Yeah, exactly.
And, just stay away, man, as much as you can, Otherwise, it's just going to be like, this is going to last, So it's tough. And we kind of take it more seriously. So, we only literally go out for groceries.
Yeah, same.
I mean, it's just not, because come home, you got to wipe everything down. And it's just like, oh my God. It gets so tiring, you just don't want to deal with it. So just stay home.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it's like really not much of a change. I've been the hermit, home hermit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, well, you guys work from home, so you must be really used to this. But I think when you're being told you can't go out.
Yeah, or you shouldn't go out.
Yeah, you shouldn't go out. And it kind of makes you want to go out then.
That's the thing, right? Like when someone tells you don't do it, you kind of like, I want to do it.
Yeah. It's like human nature, This is kind of like...
Yeah, it is.
But I think for me as a freelancer, I'm dealing with this sort of much easier in terms of the logistics, right? It's just me and my wife. I don't have kids. It's okay, I mean, it's really not that different. Only thing that bums me out is, who it's hurting and killing, and I don't like that. But I mean, besides that, it's actually okay, But I mean, the healthcare system here also needs a lot of help, because we're talking about, like, not just pay, but I mean, like, I have to make hours for the union.
Yeah.
So if the jobs aren't there and you don't make hours, wow, that's going to end up being a problem,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
it's difficult, and people don't realize. I looked into, like, I was looking at, okay, if I wanted to do my private insurance, like pay privately, the price tag for matching sort of like the if I want to have exactly the benefits that I have now. Oh my God, that's upwards of $2,000 for a family.
Yes, absolutely.
A month. Like, how crazy is that? $2,000 a month. If you want to have like the top benefits you get from, if you are in a union, I mean, we do pay for our insurance as well, but those goes with union dues, It becomes much cheaper, but it's a benefit of being in a union.
Oh, well, I mean, we're talking hundreds instead of thousands, and
exactly, yeah.
I think, without it, and I also read that they've started, like you can't sign up for the Affordable Care Act now, and
yeah, because it's the usually they do it once a year, at the end of the year and the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think he's closed that or something.
Yeah,
and that's
which makes no
horrible.
sense.
I mean, and I mean, look, I mean, every country, well, not every country, but a lot of countries have healthcare that works.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, for me, being, disabled too. I mean, I'm like, wow, okay. I mean, we really gotta. That's not good, you know. So now I've got the added thing, like, whatever job comes my way, I gotta take. Like, you can't sort of pick and choose, and you just gotta take it. If it's union, I'm taking it. I just being realistic, right? I mean, it's just part of what it is, because I mean, like, okay, we got to make hours, and I'm good for a little while, but if this is sort of a long haul kind of thing, what am I going to do? So
what's your take on the new media? Because, like, for instance, one of the things I've been hearing a lot, and it comes from mouths of podcasters mostly, is that podcasting is becoming much more. There's much more benefit of being a podcaster now than ever, because everyone is watching it, right? And when you think about, I mean, Art Cafe is like nowhere near the level of being on like a huge podcast that makes money. There's like a threshold in which you start actually making money on a podcast. Like, you have to have sponsors and all of those things. Then the money rolls in. Until then, it's pretty much voluntary work. But what made me think about it is that there's certain media that allows you to sort of, the way it's all set up is you do the work that becomes almost like your personal brand, but you release it for free, right? So if you think about social media, and when you think about YouTube, when you think about all of those avenues that allow people to enjoy your content for free, but then you attach the monetary systems that are so widespread that they become almost unaffected by the whole situation. So you might think about Patreon, or subscription models for YouTube channels, or whatever. Or even just like learning materials that, okay, I do like free teaching on YouTube, but what's associated to it is like, you have that element, but then, for cheap price, you can also get like the extra that I sell. And then I get also, benefits from, I'm not talking about myself specifically, but there are channels that are set up like that, and they're pretty much, I mean, the economy affects everyone, right? So people will spend less money. That's pretty obvious, but it's not like a huge blow where it's like you're grind to the halt, or I have to take all the work now. I wonder what's your take on this. Like,
well, I mean, I personally,
it's gonna change.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and I think this is going to be a matter of, it's going to be an over saturation of podcasters and live streamers, and it's going to get to a point where it's going to be hard to find certain people. It's hard to establish somebody, unless you already have a following like you. For a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm going to start podcasting first," I mean, are you any good at it? I mean, that's not everybody can do it, because it's
right.
It's not that easy. People think it's just talking and stuff, but you have to be a good interviewer, and all
the amount of shit I get for interrupting and not letting people speak. That's a craft, dude.
It's hard, man. I mean, and I think you're building it more of a conversation, which I think works great. But I think that you have actually a lot more followers and a following than most people. But let's say I was to start now. I mean, people wouldn't even know where to go, and it's just going to get worse. Because look at the learning aspect, just learning, right? Okay, I'm going to go learn something. Right. There's so many videos, you don't even know what to watch. Most of the people I mentor, they're like, I said, okay, go find out about this subject. And they go, there's so much out there. I don't even know what to watch. And then I find out they watch something that's actually wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much. That's why like Learn Squared, I think, is a really good thing right now. It's just really, it's really targeted at the specific industry and the specific skills. And then podcasts, I think, actually will be really good because I listen to everything, I watch everything because that's how I kind of work.
Right.
I like having something to listen to instead of music. I mean, that's how I work. And I think that's how a lot of people, they like they're home, they want to feel like someone's talking to them. It feels good, you know? So I actually think it's going to be big. But not that it's not already big, but building it is not going to be easy.
It never is. No matter
Yeah,
what.
and you got to have your own take, right? Maybe you're the angry podcast guy, you know, whatever. You know,
or the most polite one.
You know, or you just shoot the shit with your friends, and or you do live drawing or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I think it really can work. It's just that one of those things you have to figure out how to monetize it because
right.
I mean, there's doing it, and then there's also doing it so that, hey, I can, get some revenue from this because it's your time, and we need to survive here, right? So,
yeah.
Do you have a Patreon?
I do, but I almost never advertise it. I mean, it's always in the footnote. The problem is, I'm gonna step away from Patreon actually very soon. And mostly because the Art Cafe channel has been approved to be a membership channel. So all I need to do is actually make the badges and all that stuff that allows people to actually become members.
On YouTube.
On YouTube, yeah. It's just easier for. It's just like if you think from UI UX perspective, right? If you're already subscribed and you want to be a member, right? All you have to do is just click membership, right? And then you're becoming a member. Like you pay whatever you want to pay. If you want to be a member, then you do it, right? It doesn't change anything.
I didn't even know YouTube had memberfp channels. I didn't know that.
They do. Like you have to reach a certain threshold of the amount of subscribers and how often you upload, like all of those things. It's not too difficult, but there are requirements. I think it's the 25,000 mark of subscribers.
You're way past that.
Almost 40.
Yeah,
it's growing. I couldn't be more happy that I have so many people watching.
I think it would have grown even more if you had time because so
absolutely.
much work. But I mean, a lot of people don't realize how much time this is.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
and one of the we talked about this before we started conversation, right? Because you asked like, hey, how come you're not doing those things live anymore? It's just there's so many issues that come in when it comes to live recording. I don't have a studio. I'm doing it from where I work, and there's just interruptions that can happen anytime. I have my daughter running in, any moment. Or something might be happening. I also like, when I talk with you, there's different audio levels. So I can make sure that those are adjusted. There's just a lot of things that could be done. I just have more time for conversation instead of paying attention to technical issues that always been like the show has been riddled with it. Almost every other episode was just something, whether the software changed or there was an update and now all of a sudden the audio is not working. Those things can be figured out if it's pre-recorded versus if I'm jumping on live and people are like typing like, hey, I cannot hear you. It's like, fuck, And because the way this is done, it's obviously it's on YouTube, but I'm also releasing it on like Spotify and iTunes and Google Play. All of those places.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, all of those places. Every episode that I upload or premiere, you can listen to it there as well. Yeah, Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and Stitcher. Those are like I think the 5 extra places you can listen to. So
the production value is definitely much better, and you know, the conversation ends up being more chill and absolutely. I mean, but I think the only thing you miss is the interaction, right? From sort of the live, whatever, you know, the people that are there.
That's the difficult part, because when you talk with someone on Skype, you're not in person, so it's difficult to look eye to eye. And so like you're very difficult to anticipate when you finish talking or you're about to start talking. So the interruptions happen more naturally because of it, and also because of the delay. I mean, there's just very, very slight, not significant, very slight, but it's significant enough that there have to be pauses in between the conversations, right? So you say something and I'm trying to anticipate when you're done. That's one of the things also, like when you do a podcast, and I really appreciate the comments that I get, and I rest assured read them. Some of them are really aggressive, but I read them. Most people are actually very chill. I love the community that is around Art Cafe. But yeah, I've heard comments where like you're interrupting everyone all the time, and I was like, fuck yeah, this asshole, like what do you know? But you know, I don't think that way anymore. And it's like, yeah, you're right, I've been interrupting a lot, so I'm trying to like avoid that as much as I can. But then comes to another aspects, like, oh, what's the balance of like how much I'm talking versus how much guest is talking? You know, that's always an issue too.
I mean, it's okay if you want to improve as an interviewer or a podcaster, but I think that, you know, in the end, you know, a lot of people have to realize, and I realize that, and I have to thank the people like you and other people who put up this content that is for free. And, you know, I mean, constructive feedback is great, but, you know, take it, you know, chill on the feedback sometimes, because it's like, look, you're getting this for free. You know, it's just a conversation, you know, for your benefit. You can listen to it or not, but in the end, being nasty is just, what's that going to achieve, you know? And, you know, to those people, I just say, you know, well, don't listen then if that's really your problem, but this is free. What do you want, you know?
I appreciate the best thing about reading comments is that when someone goes, and that happens so rare. Let me just be straight here. It's very rare that someone goes like really aggressive. But when someone does go really aggressive, the community that's behind this podcast, like they just keep things straight, man.
Yeah, no, that's, you know,
they just jump in like, get out of here.
Yeah, because they have common sense. I mean, you know, you're gonna get one jerk out there that's gonna be like, hey man, what, you know, like they're entitled. They think, well, I need more content, but you know, at this, they have to realize, man, you're getting so much for nothing, and this is other people's time and a lot of knowledge too. You know, on the arts cafes, you know, if you want to be a concept artist or any kind of, you know, artist in this field, man, you know, you listen to all of them, you have a pretty damn good idea of how it's done.
I'm trying my best. Definitely trying my. There are other podcasts that do it really well. The one that I've been looking at recently, it's like a podcast YouTube channel, Flip Normals. I wish Level Up was back. You know, Wojtek and Jonas, they were and Derek, they were doing really good.
Yeah, they were
really good work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, really fun.
Flip Normals is great. Because, you know, that's the thing is I was thinking of doing sort of a not so much a podcast, but more like a kind of like a Flip Normals thing on, like, you know, art, portfolio reviews, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
But I really need someone to bounce off of. I'm not a kind of guy that really does well just talking about myself.
You need like a dancing partner.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know if you might be more comfortable, but I need, like, the Flip Normal guys is perfect. They have a good flow and feel to it.
Yeah.
You know, but I can't just keep talking for like 2 hours and then just you know?
I don't like talking to myself either. That's one of the reasons why I stopped, like one of many reasons why I stopped streaming, like doing a Twitch stream, is because it's just like it's fun to talk with chat. Don't get me wrong. Like it's just people just post sometimes something funny, and it's like really fun to interact with people in chat or answer questions. That's the part that I liked, but it's just like it's very empty still. Like it's very difficult to talk to the air or just talk to the camera, you know? I'm just not that kind of person. There's just some people that do it really well, and people that it's impossible. You know?
Yeah, some people just want to share their life and they're cool with it. But for me, I need someone to bounce like this. Like, hey, if we were looking at a portfolio now, but hey, what do you think of that?
Yeah,
and I'd say so. For me, if it was
need a dancing
like
partner
that,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's a craft. Like, I feel like I'm a white belt of podcasting still,
Well, no, I'd say you're way beyond the white. Do you still do, I mean, not right now, but were you still into the jiu-jitsu stuff?
No, I stopped when I mean, I was doing it still when my daughter was growing up, but eventually it just became, I had to just put my priorities straight. And it's like, okay, because jiu-jitsu is so addictive, and I just, like, to me, it's one of those things. That's one of the reasons why I don't play video games either, where I just wanted to be really competitive about it. Not necessarily going to competitions, but like learn and like get better and
get better at it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where it just scales infinitely up to infinity, like you can always learn and practice, and it's all about learning and practicing. It's almost like art in a way, where you can constantly learn new things, and if you don't, then you get left behind, and people you roll with and spar with, they just become so much better over time. So yeah, it became very difficult to sort of like maintain the commitment, and to me it was like, if I cannot do that, I might as well just not do it at all, because it's just not my priority anymore,
Yeah, I mean, when you have a family, that's already, it takes a lot of time right there.
So yeah, I want to get back to it, but it's like in LA, I would need to move out from here and be in a place where I can just get there in like 10 minutes, because like when you go to the class, it's at least an hour and a half, right?
You mean like just commute?
No, just the class itself.
Right,
it's at least an hour and a half, unless you're not only do like the drills, then it's probably like an hour, right? But you still want to roll, like you still want to practice what you drill, but then add 45 minutes at least of commute each way. That's just became like 4 hours of a day. I cannot commit that much time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's just too difficult. And then
are you still staying fit though,
like
exercising?
I try to eat healthy so I don't get like bloated. I try to go for walks. I have my kettlebells I work out with. I try to be consistent enough so that I have enough movement so I don't get like completely become like a hunchback. Fucking It's not because you have to find motivation for it too, and it's just like, again, like, oh, I could do that or just do some more work,
Yeah, but I think sometimes because I've been having a lot of blocks lately, and if you're talking to my wife, and she's an artist as well, and we're trying to figure out how to sort of get out of these blocks and make the result is to make better work that speaks to us.
Right.
But the thing is, how do you get past that? How do you get past? And some people just kind of, okay, put my head down, I'm just going to keep sketching, drawing. And for some people, maybe a little bit of a change in schedule, a change in, for me, this is what I'm doing. So
yeah,
I never used to, wake up and work out like that or read more. I didn't do that, but now I'm like, okay, I'm here, so I'm changing everything and see if that sparks some kind of something, because the same thing wasn't working for me. So trying now, but it's well, I'm still doing it. So it's good in that way, but it does kind of frees your mind from all the pressure of just wanting to do more and better,
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, definitely doing a workout, any kind of workout, even if it's just a walk, it does help to get your mind in the right spot. Having like a physical activity. If you don't do any physical activity, Like I find with myself specifically, I get irritated quite quickly if I don't do that, you know. It's just the amount of energy that sort of like clogs in my head, and then just you know, the way my brain works, I found, is that oftentimes it just runs, and it's very difficult to stop it from running, like, and calm down. And it becomes extra difficult when you want to do something very specific, but now you have like all the responsibilities that stop you from doing it. I get really frustrated when that happens.
Do you do any meditation?
I tried for a while, and then kind of like
Yeah, so meditation for me,
help.
you know, my wife does it all the time, but I'm like, I was the guy that's like, 1 minute later I'm like, I can't keep my mind, I can't do this, stop it, you know. And it was so hard, and it's still really hard, but I find that it really does calm me, and in the end I start having when I have a different headspace, then my work, or not work, but my art becomes better.
Right.
And yeah. That's the weirdest thing. And also reading like some of the appropriate books, you know, that calm you. I mean, because for me, I need to be calmed more than, you know, I need to be motivated.
Right.
I'm usually that way. So, but it's really worked for me. Just any kind of meditation, I think is good. And it's, you know, because for the last 2 weeks when I was in that quarantine thing, I was sitting there staring at the screen, trying to do something. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I sat there for like 6 hours and there was nothing.
Right.
I mean, that happens. Does that happen to you?
Everyone.
Because I was sitting there going, shit. And this day after day after day. And then my wife's like, maybe you're just really upset about what's happening and you're not processing, man. And instead you're staring at the screen, trying to make something.
Yeah.
Just process the damn thing, then come back, you know? So
that's one of the reasons I don't do personal art when I don't have a very specific idea what I want to do. I just don't.
Well, how is your personal art coming? I mean, I know you were doing Showtime and other things. What's going on with stuff like that?
So the way I try to work is when I have a project that I know have a specific goal, it's much more easy for me to work on it versus the one thing I just found very difficult is to sit down with the blank canvas and I need to come up with an idea. That just frustrates me. I get frustrated. I never come up. I can come up with a sketch or, you know, something. I will come up with something, right? But I'll just not. It's not gonna be good enough for me. Like it's gonna be something okay. Maybe it's a good practice, but it's not gonna be one of those pieces where, you know, I've done some illustrations that I'm really not proud, but I felt they were impactful in a way that I really liked where they turn out to be, especially with Showtime. Like some of the pieces that I've done, I felt like this represents exactly what I wanted to convey with that IP, right? Same with those Gwen. I don't even know how to say the name of my own character. Gwen characters.
Oh, you mean
the fantasy stuff?
Yeah.
Like the sort of like I try to pick, not all of them were successful. Like some of them were actually where I sit down like, oh, I want to draw this character in like a different situation, and it just turns out to be average. But then like in some of them I had an actual idea. Okay, and now we're talking, right? Now I have an actual idea, and it's at least it's not to my standard. It's not just an average thing anymore. You know, it's like, oh, I just did another illustration about something, whatever. I find when I do that, it turns to be just average, even though it could be rendered well or whatever. It's just not standing out to my standard.
Interesting.
You know, whether it hits the mark with the audience or not, that's another story, right? But to me, it has to be impactful in a way.
Yeah, because for me, I think that that's interesting, because I think I kind of used to be like that. I mean, a very sort of goal-oriented, needing sort of, okay, here's what I'm going to do, here's the idea. But now I'm just, trying just to be a little bit, kind of go with the flow, and see what comes out. Because sometimes when I don't think, actually the best stuff comes out. Then I'm going to have to go, well, what is this? And then, finish it, obviously make it into something that's coherent. But for me now, I'm just, I do a lot more drawing on like real drawing, because on Matrix, like we were forced to do that kind of, not forced, but they were, Lana would be like, well, I just want to see the idea. And she really responded to Jeff Darrow. I don't know if you know who.
Oh yeah, of course.
So she really responded to his drawings, and George, we were in the same room working, and he's drawing, and I'm like, oh well, I better, do the medium that she's, prefers, which is drawing. So, I started practicing, and I thought, wow, this is actually really zen. Like drawing is quite zen. And no screen, no computer, and it kind of got me hooked. Like sometimes you can get lost doing drawings for hours, and it's not for anybody, right? I mean, it's just for yourself. But yeah, those things really helped me. But man, on Matrix, I tell you, when you got a crew like that, you're just trying to level up at that point. I'm like, I'm working in the weekends going, man,
shit, I gotta keep up.
Because I haven't drawn in a long, long time. I don't know when was the last time you drew, but man.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been like over 10 years. I mean, I didn't need to do that. But seeing everybody get into the whole traditional media there was, I mean, there were other people who were also just digital purely, but having Jeff there and George and, all these old OG guys, that were just, man, it's a pretty amazing experience. I mean, I have to say that's one of the highlights of, probably my career.
That's awesome.
That was super fun. And it's a shame
drawing
right
can
now.
Be fun. Yeah, drawing can be fun because, as you said, it's very zen. Like you don't have Control Z and you don't look at the screen. Kind of like
I don't know how many times I actually hit Control Z on my hand at the beginning. That was so lame. I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, it's much more decisive what you do. Like, okay, if I fuck up, then it's a wrap. I need to start over.
Yeah, or the eraser, which I try not to use, but at the beginning I was erasing all the time. Because my hand just didn't have that control.
It's practice.
And it sucks because we have been in this industry so long now. We know what it should look like.
Yeah.
So we're giving ourselves a lot of pressure because it doesn't look like what it should look like, that we're like, oh man, this is bad. How can I show it to the director tomorrow? This is horrible. Yeah. So then you spend like hours redrawing, but it's actually good because you're actually really practicing.
Right. I was about to ask you how you deal with that, because like, whether it's drawing or digital, like you're gonna be at a point oftentimes where it's like it's just not coming together. It just doesn't look like it's in your head, and it's frustrating. You look at it, it's like, oh my, it's nowhere near in lighting. It's nowhere near in design. Like when I close my eyes, I can totally see what it's supposed to be, but then my hand is refusing.
Yeah. So I mean, at the beginning, I was just like, I would still go back to the ways I knew, which was if I see something, if this is the design, I'll try to do it in 3D, and then I'll draw what I see in 3D,
right?
So that it's counterintuitive. Obviously, you should just be able to turn in the 3D model, and that's fine, right? I mean, and to get a critique, but I wanted to draw it just to learn how to draw it better, and while drawing it, the design got better because I was like, oh, it should be like this. But now I'm not afraid of not being able to draw it because I really literally just have to look at the screen and go, okay, it's like that. And that way worked for me until it got to a point where I didn't even really need the screen. I could just kind of draw it. And if I ever need it, I just go back to a 3D. And that reminds me when I took a class, I took 2 classes with Craig Mullins, like a couple years ago, and like a one-on-one class, a painting class. And, he just had a lot of these sort of nuggets of, like he's like, go ahead and make a model. No problem.
Right.
I'm all down for it. But then just draw the model. Don't draw on top of it. Don't paint on top of it. Draw it. Because it's a study model. That's what it's for. So I was like, oh, okay. And the result always looks better than if you traced it. So that really worked for me, and I took that and I kind of just used it on Matrix, and I said, okay, you like drawings, then I will do that. But I'll try to just draw. Like if I like a design like one of the chairs, where they sit in and they get jacked in. And I was like, well, that's a complex thing to draw in perspective, For me, I couldn't do it well. So I built it, and then I just put it on the screen, just drew it. Okay, doesn't look good, do it again, draw it again until it becomes good. And then the next day I would have something. But you're doing extra time for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to, like, sometimes it's the end of the day and it just doesn't look like you wanted it to be, and it's like, hey, if I know it's not worth maybe financially, but if I put like extra 2 hours in it, it's gonna be where it needs to be. And sometimes you just need to, because you might not be at your best at that day. And
and a lot of people don't realize that, right? They think here's a good example of something that's happened like that. So I was on a show once, and the production designer said to me, how long did this take you, like looking at something on my portfolio? And I said, okay, well, that one took about 4 hours. But it's personal work, and it wasn't trying to solve a problem. And he goes, okay, all right. So normally 2 to 4 hours. Okay, that's okay. So then the next day,
I like how 4 hours turned to 2 to 4.
Yeah. So automatically he's like, trying to, do that. I go, 2 to 4 hours. And then the next day he goes, okay, so I'm going to have you sketch today ideas for this thing. Okay. And then at the end of the day, he Skypes me and says, so where are those drawings? And I'm like, well, I'm finishing them up. I only have, 2 of them. So, well, 2 to 4 hours, should you have more than that? By your own speed, shouldn't you have more sketches? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really kind of work like that, and that show was so stressful because he would keep pushing me. And a lot of times these things can take 2 hours and they can take 2 days.
Yeah.
And sometimes what I usually do is I like to turn in work usually the next day, so that, hey, if I'm not firing on all cylinders today, maybe I can spend some time at night, because I have a standard I want to meet for myself.
Yeah.
It's, a lot of people say, well, you're putting in extra time, you're not supposed to, but I'm like, that's the nature of the job. I mean, you can turn it in, but if you're happy with it, you can do that. But for me, I'm like, if it hasn't met that standard, I'll keep going until it's there, because it's just me,
Yeah.
Sounds like you're the same.
Very similar, but I would probably try to fire myself from a show if I was checked in. It's like, hey, you're supposed to do 3 or 4 and not 2. It's like, okay, like that's,
yeah. But a lot of people don't realize too is that, and these are things that most people don't hear, but when that happens, it's hard to eject yourself from a show, once you're on.
Yeah, you try to be professional.
Yeah,
but it's usually a red flag for me.
Would you talk to the production designer if that happened to you?
I try to be upfront with the expectations and what can I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then so what I started doing a lot, and I feel that helps to manage the expectations, is that I always ask what kind of work they like to see,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you work with someone who you worked with before, they know what you can do. And and I try to be, especially with film, I really try to be picky whenever I can, because sometimes I just can't do it. Like sometimes, as you said, you're in a situation where you just have to pick up a show and that's it, and that's that. So when you have to do that, you do it, and then you're a professional about it. But sometimes when I work with someone who's completely new to me and I've never worked with them before, I try to be realistic about expectations. I like to ask what kind of work they like to see. And if they say like, oh, I like sketches, and like, okay, you know, all the like setting expectation to say, I can come up with ideas, and some days I'll have more and some days I'll have less, you know. And you know, it's normally not the way I work, but if it's sketches, they might not look the best, but I'll give you an idea what it's supposed to be. And then if you want to get the quality that you reached out to me to get, you know, because like if you reached out to me, you've seen my work, you know what I can do. That takes a little more time. And if we don't go back and forth all the time, you know, it's going to take this amount of time if we want to like really develop the idea and get like all the elements in and have back and forth feedback. That's usually that's the amount of time it takes, you know. It gives an expectations. And then like sometimes, you know, like, oh, would you like to see, you know, maybe like 3D mock-ups, and they would say like, oh, that's interesting. Or some production designers are very familiar with it. It's like, yeah, I really like working that way. And if they say that, then I know, okay, we're gonna spend a day maybe to set up a scene, like pick some camera angles, pick some lighting scenarios, but it's not gonna look finished, right? But it will give us a starting point. So maybe like the start is going to be a little slower, but then we have so much more flexibility of what we can do with this. Versus like, okay, if I give you 5 sketches, like you have to realize that if you want to do any drastic changes, I have to start over.
Yeah,
because those are just sketches. Like,
I mean, I hate the whole 5 sketches thing, and I think it gets to a point in my career that I'm like, you know, I'm gonna solve the problem for you. So just tell me what you need. I will give you sketches, but not like 5 different ideas. You know, that doesn't really work with me. And you know, we were talking about this before, you know, the call. Like, you know, everybody works differently. You know,
exactly. Yeah.
And you have to find
might just not be the right
that works
fit
with you. You know.
Yeah, and sometimes it's okay. I mean, I've been talking about this with Ash as well, and all of my friends. It's like there's just sometimes you might not be the right fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've bumped into so many of that, you know, because I was telling people, you know, like last year I was on a crazy amount of films because it just happened to be one of those overlapping crazy years.
Right.
And if you're working with 7 people, there's going to be bound to be people there, 7 different production designers that work well with you and some that don't. And, you know, I think a lot of times it's just, how do you take it with a grain of salt, or how do you just even step away and say, hey, I appreciate that we're working together, but we need to end this relationship, because sometimes it can be really toxic.
Right.
And, you know, you just don't know, you know, who you're working with sometimes. You know, you ask, I always try to ask around, but
it's such a small industry too.
Yeah.
Like you will hear from someone. We all know stories about, you know, some people that are just horrible to work with.
Oh yeah.
We all know those stories.
Yeah, and I really trust my fellow, you know, like if I'll have something, I'll say, hey guys, what about this guy? And if I get a couple of negatives, I'll turn it down.
Yeah.
Like there's no point, you know, to put yourself, it's a lot of stress that people don't realize, because once you're on, I take that shit seriously.
Yeah, and you have to.
Yeah, I really want to do the best work, and sometimes you just kill yourself trying to do it. But you know, in the end, it's not the right relationship, like you said, right? I mean, that's crucial, and then the right relationship, they'll keep calling you back.
Yeah, relationships matter a lot in this industry. It's such a small industry where if you accept a show, and then you set up wrong expectations and you fail on them, and do it in a miserable way and be shitty about it, it's almost a guarantee you're not going to be getting many calls ever. You know, it's like, and that's why I asked, like, so, you know, sometimes you're just not a right fit. And it's better to be good upfront about it and say like, look, you know, I'm trying my best, it's just not working out, and I can, what can we do about it? Like, or I can just step away and not waste your money and time. That's sometimes being on, and it's very difficult and very touchy way. I mean, thankfully I haven't had to deal with a situation like that personally, but I dealt with shows where I just didn't know, and we're in this crazy industry where the shows get shut down left and right for no reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're feeling like you're doing a good work or get no feedback, because sometimes you work with directors or production designers and the way they prefer to work is just to give you a task and give you maybe feedback, but they never tell you if it's good or bad.
Yeah, that's especially when you're remote, right? I mean,
right. It's very difficult when you're working remotely. And then all of a sudden the show goes shut down. You get a call for our director or producer. You know what? Like, I think it's going to be your last day. And all right, did I fuck up or not? And it's like, it's a question you cannot ask,
But it's funny because actually, the next time they call you back, I didn't fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But
it's such a it's such a weird thing, because you're left in the dark and it's very difficult to know. And those people are, whether you like it or not, whether they are busy or they just don't like replying to people. Like, that's one of my pet peeves with film industry, because everything is so volatile and relationship based, people are very careful with how they respond to people, which has its positives and negatives. The positive side is, the relationships matter, and then you get to work with the same people over and over, and it's great. The negative is like, in a situation like that, it's like, did I fuck up? Like, can you tell me? And I get it. Sometimes people are very, very attached to the way they work, and they don't want to hear any criticism, and they have egos, and people generally don't like to be confrontational, especially in film industry. I think film industry is like so unconfrontational, such an unconfrontational business, where people just don't want to argue. It's very rare you hear people arguing,
That's true. Actually, I never really thought about that.
Yeah, I've been in video games. People argue all the time.
Yeah, but with video games though, I find that it's like you're sitting in a room full of so many people. Oh my God.
I mean, productions, some of the productions we work on are as big, and the budgets are similar. It's just the way
you're always answering to the PD versus in games. The game designer is there, the art director is there, the studio guy is there, and then there's and you're like, oh my God, and they're like kind of going off and they're doing their own thing, talking, and you're like, who do I listen to?
Yeah, exactly. That's a frustrating part. Yeah, in the film you have like one or two people you're interfacing with, and that's about it. That's the positive, where you don't have too many signals coming from many directions, and you can like, okay, I think we're good,
Yeah.
So
but one of those experiences you're talking about, where you said you never had that experience of somebody telling you that it's not working, or it happened to me like many years ago. I was on a show and they were like, yeah, it doesn't look like you're putting in effort here. And I was like, oh my God, that's not, if there's one thing about what I do is that I put 100%. So I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. Right. And I said, okay, you told me to put characters, that wasn't really my thing. I'm sorry you feel that way. And honestly, like you said, I don't want to waste your money. If this is what you need and I'm not cutting it, then maybe I need to go off the show. And then he came back. He goes, okay, I'm sorry for saying it like that, because he was under a lot of pressure. But why don't you try doing this? It's more environment stuff, which is what I do. So from that point, and he was just like, okay, this is great. So this is what you do from now on. But yeah, that communication was, it was hard, man, because he came at me like, dude, you're not pulling in you're not putting in the time. I'm like, what are you talking about? I put in extra time. It just looks horrible. Yeah, because I don't do characters.
I had a situation like that, but not in the film industry. I had a client that I worked with that were very, for whatever reason, was very aggressive on like this one call. And I was like, wow, where is this coming from, you know? But a lot of times, as you said, it's just miscommunication. I mean, sometimes you just have to look back at yourself and say like, hey, maybe I fucked up, you know? Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I over or underestimated what's supposed to be done, or maybe I misunderstood. Those are situations that can happen, you know? I'm not trying to say like I'm always right and that's, you know, my client's always wrong, you know?
Yeah, but the only thing I know that is absolute 100% is that I give 100%. Whether that 100% is good enough, then that's anybody's guess.
Right. Yeah. It comes down to, sometimes you might not be the right fit. There are artists that are perfect at sketching, doing a lot of ideas, you know, and coming up with like crazy amount of ideas and be really good at sketching. You know, we all know those people that are super fast when they sketch. It's just impossible. The moment you ask some of them to like, can you do like finished matte painting kind of style or like keyframe, but it's like really polished, they're just like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah. And it's
just strengths, you know?
It's so weird because on a lot of these shows, I'm just like, did I hit something for you or not? Because a lot of them, they don't communicate. They don't say, hey, yeah, I like that. Or no, I don't like that. They just, well, you know, just do this, do more of that, do that. And I'm like, well, I mean, are you liking the way it's going? Do you want it to be something different? You can be honest with me. And they usually don't tell you. And I'm like, I'm scratching my head going, I don't know. And then the next thing you know, it's the front line in their presentation. And
exactly. And it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I thought you hated it, man. Okay. Because you kept asking for changes, right? I mean, I don't know. You didn't say you liked it. So it's interesting. I mean, you know, it's just a lot of working with people. And that's why, you know, this on Matrix was so different because I was working with Lana one-on-one, basically. And she was the production designer and the director.
Yeah.
Basically. And it was really good, you know?
I find working with directors the best, meaning like it's just raw. It's the most raw experience you're going to get. For good and bad.
And you learn a lot. You learn a lot, man. And who's like the best director that you like working with?
I haven't worked with many. I really liked working with Rupert on Ghost in the Shell. That was a really good experience. There was a bunch of like shows that I worked with the director, but most of them were shut down, unfortunately. Another great director I really liked working with was Robert Rodriguez. Rodriguez.
Yeah. Alita?
No, I haven't worked on Alita. I've done.
The guy,
He did direct that show. I did one painting for him for that show.
Oh, sweet.
It was like the very early, like, hey, we need some presentation files, and I did one among many. So that was fun. That was a good one. Oh, I worked with Jordan Vogt Roberts on Skull Island.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good too. I liked him. I liked working with him.
Do you like the high energy? Is that like passionate kind of feel?
I didn't get that. I don't know. I didn't get that impression. It was very. I mean, I was maybe because I was working remotely with him. Most of the people I work with is remote, so maybe I'm not getting the high energy impact thing that some people get, you know, like I mean, we know directors are so different, you know, and production designers to that point as well. It's I don't know. I mean, the only person I worked with on the peripheral the only director that I worked on the peripheral directly with was Rupert, and that was like my first union show as well. Or like pre-union show.
Ghost in the Shell?
No, that was before Ghost in the Shell. That's where I actually met him. You know, I was working with him and James Chinland, who is the production designer on the new Batman, right? Both great people. I loved working with both of them. James was actually very first production designer I worked with as well.
Did he get you into the union?
No, like the show was shut down literally a day before I was supposed to head in of hours. I was like, Well, like throwing hands all the time, you know? But
No.
that's the business, you know? But shortly after, I got Captain America, and that got me in like right away. Yeah. So it was good. Yeah, weird stuff. Getting in the union is tricky. I mean, it's getting a little more easy these days. But for those who are like curious, like what's the union? It's all the films that start in LA, and especially if they have a writer, they are union shows. Meaning, all the studios work with the local unions. So it's all unionized. So you have to be part of the union in order to work on the show. And then once it moves out of the country or different states or whatever areas, then you're like, okay, I can just be a freelancer from now on,
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's hard, right?
Yeah, you have to work like specific amount of days on the show. That is not a union show just yet. And then once it gets a writer, then it gets unionized, because then everyone has to be a union member. And that's what basically was happening with the first show I was working on. Like they got a writer, it was supposed to be unionized, and then they can invite a certain amount of new people to the union, and you have to get amount of days. It's just like it has to be a right timing, right amount of time. Like there's just so many things that have to work out, and they really want to have you. Because the preference is usually have a union artist to work on a show, but it's getting more loose now.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think you can always find some kind of loophole, which I think the union's looking into, but because then what's the point, Because a lot of people don't realize when you get into the union, you have to pay dues, but you also have to pay an initiation fee. That's not cheap.
Yeah, it's a couple $1,000s.
Oh, hey, welcome. It was $8,000.
Oh, it's 8 now? Oh, damn. It was a little less than that before.
Yeah, it was not cheap. And but if you think, of course, in the long term, your insurance is basically paid for yearly. So of course, you come out in the positive, but that's if you make hours and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, if you work and then you work for I think if you work full time for a couple of months straight, it kind of recoups itself, that initiation fee. But then obviously you have to keep working in order to keep your insurance and all of those benefits you get. So it's like a replacement for what you would get from working in the games company, for instance, right? That would offer you benefits like that.
Yeah, I just found that it puts me at a lot of stress, because I have to look at every half a year how many hours I'm making, and man, these shows, they sometimes they're, last year I'm like 7 shows, but then, there could be years where you're just kind of sitting going, I haven't gotten a call in a while. Still waiting for stuff. So
or you start working, you start working 2 days. It's like, oh, we're done. It's like, okay.
Yeah. And then now with this whole virus thing, I mean, I haven't really heard anything.
It's going to be tough.
With the virus, I haven't heard of any shows. I don't know. So because we'll have to see on that.
I think it's going to be quiet in the whole industry for a while. So people could, again, coming back to that idea of this is probably the best time to learn, because the likelihood of there is certain aspects of it, right? And I'm curious to hear your opinion, but like the likelihood of you not working now because of your situation with work is very high. I mean, it's probably more, in the industry we are in, there's a lot of freelancers, but not everyone is freelancer. Not everyone got the privilege to continue working from home once it's all shut down. So a lot of listeners could be in a situation where, okay, I have to now learn, or maybe you're trying to get in the industry. Like this is the time where everyone is kind of sitting on their ass, figuring this out, So taking advantage of that time is probably there's a good time to do it now. Really good time to do it now, because you almost have no choice.
Yeah, no, it's a good time. I mean, so here's what I was battling with: Blender or Unreal. I was going, well, I already know a 3D software. I can, I don't need Blender, but Unreal is Unreal. It's different from anything else, and it's definitely the wave of the future. even if it's for VR or if it's for the technology that's in the Mandalorian, which is going on every film. I was like, wow, did I go Blender? Because Blender is the new hip software, that's got everything, and it's gonna be big. I mean, it's a free piece of software that has some real attention to it, or Unreal. I don't know. What would you learn?
Probably Unreal.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning.
I've tried. I mean, don't. And I had, you can listen to my conversation with Jama about it. I have some serious issues with Blender when it comes to performance. Once they fix that, it's probably much easier choice. I would say for anyone who's like starting with 3D software at all, like if you haven't done any 3D software before, Blender is an obvious choice.
Yeah,
it's an obvious, just free. Like,
yeah, and it's good. It's a good piece of software.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. It's not just good. It's great. It's really fucking great. Blender is really great. It's just for the things that I do, specifically me. I mean, I've learned enough to use it for production, and I use it in some specific scenarios as well, because it's just faster. But again, it comes down. It's just a tool. At the end of the day, it's just a tool. But when you have to choose, I would say, if you're starting, Blender would be good. But you already know, like, you work with Maya, right?
Yeah, I work with Maya. Yeah.
I mean, Maya is sort of like a proven production software for VFX. Every VFX studio is using Maya. Most of the game studios are using Maya. I mean, you already know how to use it for production as well. And Unreal is more of like, if you're working in film, learning Unreal is probably the best choice, because every show is using Unreal at this time, almost.
Absolutely.
It feels like so. And with the digital sets, like, the more you can put yourself in a situation where your knowledge and the things you can do sort of make your work more undeniable, the better for you. Because imagine a situation where you're working with a set designers, or or you're doing your designs and you make it in Unreal Engine. Like with the digital sets, for instance, they can just like literally try it in real time and see how it works on the set.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, well, they're hiring you, and they know that they can get the results straight away from you. They don't need to hire another person to translate what you've done into that set and build it. That's one of the benefits of knowing 3D, where you can build stuff in 3D so that someone else doesn't have to translate your drawings into 3D.
Do you ever get to the point where you feel like, like I'm becoming more of a 3D person, like asset builder, than I am a designer? Does that?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. I don't know. I try to not look at it that way. I look at tools in a way where those are just tools, whether a 2D or 3D, that doesn't matter to me. What matters is the final result that I want to get out of them. And that's what matters. But, sometimes I like to draw. I just want to draw. I just want to draw.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But in a production environment, when I'm working on films, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me that much. In like most of the shows that I've been working on recently, it's a good mix actually. I've done projects where or illustrations or specific projects where almost 99% would be just 3D, versus ones I wouldn't touch 3D at all. I would do everything in Photoshop,
Yeah.
So it's I feel like there was a steady progression of paper drawings to digital art to 2D and then 3D, right? And then Unreal, VR, whatever. And it was just sort of like going that direction, where it's like, oh, like if you're only painting, now learn 3D. Like, 3D, then get better at it. It's just like, that's sort of like the steady route of that's where everyone is going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's reaching that point where you have more options now, and it's maybe not as necessary anymore. And you have projects where, okay, there's more variety of projects where I can just like, oh, I don't have to do this in 3D. I can do this whole project just painting, or I don't have to paint at all on this one. I can do everything in 3D. I don't have to make a polished, renders. I can just design stuff that looks good, and like the wireframe is good enough for people, or they can just throw it into VR and start testing it there, Or I have a project where there's nothing realistic, and I just like literally draw, just draw, I had projects like that already. So I feel like there's more variety of where things are going. I don't think that the direction of like everything has to be photorealistic is there anymore. I mean, it's there, and it's still the vast majority of the entertainment industry, whether it's video games or film. But even in video games, there's just like with mobile and iPads and iPhones and Switch, a lot of those games are very stylized, and that's a giant market where all of a sudden you don't have to do anything realistic, Look at League of Legends, Riot Games. I mean, League of Legends is basically a cartoon game. Like it looks like a cartoon. It looks great, but it's not realistic at all. And a lot of drawings that are done for it are, they have nothing to do with like the cutting edge technology. It's more about like the taste and the feel of it, So I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, where do you think this is going?
For me, I think sometimes the reason I ask that question is because I'm fearing like you get into the Unreal stuff and you do like really like, okay, here's I do this set, and there's a certain amount of assets that needs to be built for it, and then it gets to a point where people are just asking you to update assets and change, put this and stuff. And it's happened not so much in the Unreal, but there's projects where, I've designed something and then they go, well, can we have the model? And they go, oh, well, but this model can you put some more of that and make that a little bit more like that? And then put a little bit more high fidelity so we can use it. And I'm like, you become sort of this, yes, it is your design, but you become a little bit more like a technical guy.
Right.
And I'm like, and I find myself at those times going, wow, you get so much more bang for your buck if you hired a real modeler to do that. But if you will force me to do it, then it's going to take longer, and I'm probably not going to have a very good time doing it. But that's where I go, when you go down the Unreal route, you're going to feed assets in. And then they're going to say, well, we need to update the assets tomorrow, put more assets and do this. And then you become this guy who's updating assets now more. And because I've talked to some people on different shows, and that's kind of how it's happening.
Right.
And so they're like, well, we feel more like technicians than artists. So I see a little bit of, I'm not sure where that's going to go. I don't know Unreal enough yet to even know what that means, but
I think there's a balance, I don't know. I feel like if you paint, and if you don't like doing detailed paintings, it will have the same
thing. Exactly. Like, can you sweeten it up and detail it out? Then you're like, oh man.
It's like, how many details can I add? I feel it's the same. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't have enough experience with that specifically, or maybe it's just me. Sometimes I just enjoy, like, all right, I've put my fair amount of design work into it, and now I can just like literally switch my mind off and just like work in details. Sometimes that's good.
Yeah, sometimes it's really therapeutic doing that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's interesting to hear that for sure, because like I've never thought about it that way, where it's like, oh, you're becoming literally an assets designer, like, or
because I've talked to
kind of artist.
A lot of the sort of, I wouldn't say older guys, but some of the designers that I've talked to, they're like, yeah, I get to a certain point and I don't want to do any more.
Right.
And then, if I do that, then it's just going to make me miserable. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And they're usually the kind of people that don't really want to push the software any further or learn any new software. But they're really good at design, and they get really upset when they want to stay on the show, but then they don't have sort of the skills for the later parts of the show, which is to do more technical stuff. So that's kind of why I was like, I wonder how that is for you, and how it is for me. So yeah.
I think doing personal work is a giant remedy for all of it.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, I've met some people in the last year that I'm like, okay, so what do you want to do? Personal work, and they're like, I don't do personal work. This is it. I was like, oh, really? Oh, interesting. And I find a lot of people don't express themselves via personal work. They just go, you know what, I'm done. This is my work. I put my heart into it. I love this, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. Like for me, it's not like that. It's always about personal work.
Yeah.
But it's just I found it interesting that being an artist but not having any personal expression. Wow, that's interesting.
I like the condescending way you said it.
No,
not
having
personal expression.
I'm condescending in that way. It's just more just I just never thought of it.
I get it. I'm just pulling your leg.
Yeah. No, but I mean, is this? Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah, I meet people like that all the time. I mean, especially in production, you get to see them all the time. Some people are that way. They just like to do what they're asked to do, and that's it. They don't want to do anything more. I think it's for each their own, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, we all know artists that just don't want to do any production work. All they want to do is just do their own work, and some of them are really successful at it. So I guess you have to find your way.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works. I mean, absolutely no issues. It's just, I mean, I was just so into like personal expression that I was like, I couldn't imagine not, and then I was like, oh, some people just, hey, look, this works for me and I don't need to do that. I was like, oh, wow, okay. And because it kind of opened me up to go, well, maybe I can just chill sometimes too. I don't have to try so hard to express, and just see what I want to do that day,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know, man. It's
there's no right answer. I mean,
obviously. Exactly. There is no right or wrong when it comes to that. Yeah. I mean, there's the proof is there. Like it's a matter of the work ethic and finding what you are the best at and how you can express that and how can you make the best out of what you can do.
Yeah, just have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Just enjoy,
Yeah. Sometimes it could be just, you're an asset manager or something.
Yeah, and
like
you know what? There's nothing wrong with being that either.
Yeah.
I think it's just, for me, I think there are other challenges I want to tackle. And I've done enough of that in my career that I think, that's not really for me. But,
right.
I mean, I've had a weird ass career where I've done pretty much everything. And it, in terms of like technical stuff too, I was a modeler before, for God's sake. So,
right.
So I know that, I kind of don't want to go back to that. But yeah, I mean, to each their own, really.
I feel the world we're in and the direction in which but obviously with everything going on right now, like if it's like all up in the air, but generally speaking, I think the direction that everything goes in is like more personal responsibility of what you're gonna do with your career, and being less specialized in or going more in a creative direction versus specialized mechanical work, if you know what I mean. So like I think the kind of work where you're just modeling things and based on something, that's the kind of thing that's going to start slowly or is already slowly going away, versus having more of a creative input into things, because like a lot of stuff gets automated over time. Like right now we're talking about things like UVs being automated by software, or topology. I think that's another thing that's going to be pretty much obsolete very soon, with how the software is progressing with retopology tools that are available all across the softwares, and things where you're just modeling something and you're supposed to be fast at it. Eventually software will replace it.
I mean, the AI thing and all that as well.
Like the Fusion 360 has this option where it's the generative design, meaning like you're feeding information. I would have to look into it because I'm not talking like out of my ass basically, but you can do generative design elements that are used for like printing later on, right? So it's all like AI based, and I think a lot of that is going that way. But yeah, like having your own ideas or personality that people recognize you for. I feel like that's the direction in which like standing out from the crowd starts to mean or mean more and actually have more value.
Yeah, no,
to
absolutely.
me.
Yeah.
Well, not specifically to me, but I feel like the industry starts to value people that stand out versus people who have the highest quality. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. I think that the ideas and being able to be original and unique uh, go a lot further than just being able to do something with high fidelity, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, and that's, you know, you go to our station, you know, a lot of things look quite similar. And I think, you know, if you can just kind of go, you know, just see what speaks to you, you know, everybody's unique. So if you can tap into some of your own uniqueness and do your stuff, I mean, I think that will go a long way and set you apart. Yeah.
It feels that way. What's your goals for this year? I mean, everything is again up in the air, but do you have like
being employed?
Did you set up like your own personal goals that you want to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, this year I actually, you know, I was telling you before, it was just by chance that I had set up a sabbatical to be happening after this whole event in France. So, you know, I'm just wrapping up some projects, and that, you know, I was going to set up a sabbatical to kind of see where the next part of my career is going to go. Because, you know, being on the Matrix kind of changed me a little bit in the sense that the interaction I had with the director was really good, and it made me see a lot of things on needing to create your own IP, not just necessarily IP, but your own thing, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And if nothing else comes from it, at least I'll have a brand new portfolio that speaks of what I can do and want to do now.
Right.
So if I get hired, it'll be for what I am passionate about. So I was planning for 3 to 6 months of just doing that. And
that might be just perfect.
Yeah, it just came at a perfect time because now you don't really have much of a choice. I mean, you're sidelined and you're home 24/7. So
yeah.
So that's...
You're in the full mitigation mode.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I'm going to see where things go, you know, and just go with it. Yeah, that's kind of my goal for this year. And awesome. Hopefully, you know, make some hours if something comes along, sure, but you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually a good plan. Like getting sabbaticals are so important. Like just taking time off to get things done on the stuff you always wanted to do, but maybe never had time to do, you know?
It's the hardest thing to do though, for me, because I've always said, okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical, and I don't. And then 3 years later, my wife's like, when are you going to take it? I'm sorry, you know, but it's just one of those things where you kind of, you forget that it's so important. You know it's important, but then, a job comes out, okay, I'll take the job. And then you push that further and further. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. And it gets to a point where I'm like, I just have to do it because I got so burned out. Like, when I got the call from Matrix, you know, believe it or not, I actually was like, should I take this? Because I was so burned out. I was like, I don't know that I can be of any use to anybody because I'm just like sitting here going, I can't. I just, you know, like just thinking of working was like making me sick, you know. And you know, I was talking, and then you know, my friends were like, "Are you crazy? You got to take this. Like, are you stupid?"
How long you've been in the industry? You've been way longer than me.
I mean, I think it depends on what you call the industry. I mean, I've
just working as a professional artist,
like over 20 years.
Yeah, there you go. It takes a toll if you don't take breaks.
And the film stuff has definitely, the freelance stuff takes a toll on me more than anything, because you know how it is. You overlap jobs and all this kind of stuff. And working like 16 hours a day, and you're like, dude, I can't. And the last year was constant, like, 7 days a week. Yeah, I mean, at least 14 hours a day, because I was on 2 projects, and it was just crazy. So when it got to Matrix, I was like, oh man, I can't. And then I was like, you know what, I have to do this. So, and it was also commuting to work. I hadn't done that in like over 10 years. So I was like, what, commute to work? But I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I went, and it turned out to be the best thing ever. Revitalized me, and meeting the people on the team and the director, obviously, because she really makes you, she goes a lot deeper than just a normal, like, hey, do, more red, more this, more that. I mean, it's, she tells you the reason behind, and she'll sit there with you for an hour just to talk about life.
Yeah.
It's just rare, and it gave me a lot more, like, I was like, I want to be more like that. And how do I do that is by, kind of taking your own time out to figure out who you are and what you want to do,
Yeah.
So that's kind of my goal for this year, is to do that. But it all came from that.
Yeah, sometimes those opportunities, like, should I take that? And then it turns out to be, oh wow, that's good. That's actually great that I did.
Yeah, it's the best thing I've done. Thank God I listened to to the people around me, and also your gut knows, like, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, people think I'm crazy for just saying,
Yeah, sabbatical are so difficult to take, because you always think about you have to do the work, and you always want to save some extra money, and
and you're turning down work.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like what you touched upon, like talking about last year and being a freelancer. I those who are not freelancing, it's a very difficult thing to do, because you might have a period of time where you get calls all the time, and that's an opportunity to actually cash on it. But then there might be another few months where there's maybe only one call coming in.
Exactly, it's feast or famine.
Exactly, yeah. And so you have to you have to be cautious not to overburn or overcommit to too many things all at once, because that's going to hurt your performance and maybe burn some bridges. So you have to be really careful at that. But then also like saying no to clients, and sometimes you just say no enough times that they just never come back. And that kind of shrinks your pool of people you work with. And it's very difficult. It's like almost like you have to manage those things. And then you always like get caught up in the middle of it with like, should I take sabbatical now? Because, what if the call comes in and it's a client that I'm supposed to work with? And that kind of throws a wrench into like this whole sabbatical
and that's happened every time.
Yeah. But then you realize, like, when you're on that treadmill of working from project to project, you don't find yourself with time to develop new skills or learn. And it's so crucial in the industry we're in to be prepared to learn new things,
Yeah, I think it's useful. But I mean, for me, ultimately, it took a pandemic for me to actually really make. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it shouldn't. And
the irony of it.
Yeah, but it's a lot of things I need to learn, because I'm also very like, you have your family that you need to provide for. I'm a disabled guy. I need to think about the rainy day, So I've always worked. Like having months of no work is against my core. So. Yeah, I'm fighting it, but I'm like, okay, something out of my comfort zone. Okay, let's just do it and see. And so here I
Yeah, it's difficult. Sometimes that's one of the reasons I miss like full time, being in a studio, like being full time, because the sort of like the luxury of like not thinking about what's next. It's good.
Yeah, and the whole camaraderie that you have at work, with the guys and the girls and all the people, and just being able to go home and go, tonight I'm just vegging out.
Yeah,
I'm done. I left the studio.
But then Corona hits and you're like, fuck.
Well, shit.
Yeah, it is what it is, though.
Yeah.
Dude, we've been talking for almost 2 hours now. That's so awesome. Time's flying.
Yeah, man, it was good talking to you, man. It was good to catch up. It's been a long. We've been on so many shows together.
It's crazy. It pretty much last 2.5 years. Like by sheer accident. Like we started on one project, we've been working on it, and then you went to work on something else. Now we're go to work on something else, and it turns out we're actually working on the same thing again.
I think it was like 4 projects we've worked together in the last year and a half.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
It's pretty nuts. Well, here's to many more. Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah, dude, pleasure. Always pleasure. And you know, we're gonna do it again and again. I like inviting people over and over, you know, especially, you know, good spirits, you know, and good friends.
Everybody just stay safe, and you keep your family safe.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm a hermit, so
we're all hermits now.
It's just frustrating because like normally I don't go out. I spend most of my time home, generally working or doing personal projects. Now when I cannot go, I was like, I kind of want to go.
Yeah, exactly here.
Just don't get that cabin fever.
Yeah.
But it's good to have personal projects, and whether it's a sabbatical or not, just take your attention out of the sort of what's going on and focus on what matters, what can give you benefits in the near future, because I think that's way more important now. Just like get a goal and focus on it, because you know it's going to change. Like eventually it's going to go back to where it was. Maybe it's going to be different, but you can prepare yourself to be in the good starting point and like hit the ground running, you know? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's where it's going to be. All right, guys. Thanks for joining the show and listening. As always, if you enjoyed it, subscribe, leave a like, make a comment. I read those every now and then and try to apply the knowledge that I get from YouTube comments. No, I really appreciate the love that usually comes my way. I couldn't be more thankful for that. And if you really enjoy the show, I'm gonna keep asking you to do that, because obviously that helps to get the word out and the show to reach more people. You know, subscribing and liking, all that stuff just gives more visibility. You know, that's really what it is. You know, I don't personally care if there's like 10 likes or 100 likes. That just doesn't matter for me that much. But I know how it works. You know, the more people enjoy it, and if you enjoy it and you can show that appreciation, then it just allows more people to see it. You know, so that works that way. Dude, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for having me, spending some time with me. So cool.
All right,
take care, guys.
Stay safe. Bye.
Stay safe. Cheers.